Hello, my name is Bill Sherr. I'll be wearing the blue singlet today, so if you remember when you're watching the video, Bill will be wearing blue. I'd like to begin by discussing my philosophies and the things that I believe in the sport of wrestling. Everything that I do, everything that I believe in, I've learned from people I consider to be my mentors or heroes in the sport. The person that's probably had the most influence upon my career has been a guy by the name of Stan Desit. Stan was an Olympic champion in 1976. He was an Olympic medalist in 1976, and he was a world champion in 1977, and Stan was also our first national freestyle coach in the early 80s. Stan taught me the importance of strategic wrestling, the ability to look at an opponent and measure his style and his strategy, and then to be able to adapt your wrestling so that you could be successful against that opponent. If you're going to be able to do that, you cannot be limited in your techniques to just attacking the lower body or the upper body or the certain tiles which you use. You must be able to wrestle from a variety of different positions. And Stan taught me different techniques and moves from a variety of different positions so that when I would look at an opponent, I could match my techniques and things that I wanted to do to be successful against that particular opponent. The next person that has had great influence upon my career has been a guy by the name of Dave Schultz. Dave, of course, was an Olympic champion in 1984 and was also a world champion in 1983 and probably the greatest technical wrestler this country has produced. Dave has a childlike attitude about the sport of wrestling in that he always wants to learn and pick up new things, new techniques, new ideas. And he learns from anyone that he meets and comes across. And he's forever changing his techniques and learning new things so that he's always one step ahead of his opponent. And if a person could have that childlike attitude that you want to learn and that you can learn from anyone involved in the sport, you will be able to pick up new things and you will continue to grow and become better as a wrestler. Some other people that have had influence on my career, the Peterson brothers and Dan Gable, all Olympic champions in 1972, taught me the value of being physically superior in conditioning to your opponents and being able to wear your opponents down and break them mentally with your physical conditioning. And last, the person that I learned a great deal from was Joseph Scalzo Sr., the late Joe Scalzo Sr., who was a wrestling enthusiast from the Toledo area and hosted the World Cup tournament for many, many years. When I was a very young wrestler, Joe told me to watch the great wrestlers, watch people like Lee Kemp, look at their matches. A perfect match in which Lee Kemp was able to wrestle many times is where your opponent does not score against you. And Lee would wrestle and win 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, and he'd never have his opponents come close to scoring against him. And the way he would do that was always maintaining his position on the mat. No matter what he did, whether he was attacking or in a defensive stance, he was always in position so that his opponent never had an opportunity to even come close to scoring on him. And the first thing that I'd like to cover today, and I'd like to stress throughout the video, is the importance of always maintaining proper position with your body and the balance of your body and the positioning of your arms, your legs, and your muscle structure so that when you wrestle, you'll never be in a position where you're vulnerable to an attack from your opponent. If you can do that, keep your opponent from scoring, then you're going to be very successful. Maintaining position is a matter of intensity, and if you can do it when you're practicing, you can do it in a match. And it's a matter of being intense enough to never allow yourself to get out of position. What is this proper position? Okay, wrestling in your stance, of course you need to be comfortable. You want your feet about shoulder width apart so you're in a good balanced position. I wrestle from a staggered stance. The reason I wrestle from a staggered stance, staggered meaning I have one foot placed in front of the other one, is because it eliminates one area for my opponent to attack. If this foot is back, there's no way that I'm going to let my opponent attack this leg because it's too far away from him. So now I can concentrate on defending one leg. The other thing this allows me to do is it allows me to attack my opponent because I am in this staggered stance position. This leg is now closer to my opponent and it allows me to penetrate into my takedowns, my shots quicker. All right, I bend the knees slightly, but I don't bend my knees as much as most American wrestlers probably bend their knees. I think if you bend your knees too far, you get down and you get too low and you get stuck in a position where you can't move and it's easier for your opponent to attack you. What I like to do is bend at the hips. I don't try not to bend my back, but I bend over at the hips. This gets my upper body out in front of my legs and makes my opponent have to penetrate farther to to attack my legs, and he also has to penetrate through my upper body positioning. Now, when you get into this type of a stance, you're going to be more vulnerable to being snapped down. So you must work on the strength in your lower back. You must work on your head positioning and your neck positioning to prevent yourself from being snapped down. I don't round my shoulders here, and I do not round my back. I try to force my stomach out and keep my lower back tight. At the same time I do that, I keep my shoulders tucked up around my neck. This keeps my neck stronger and in a stronger position. Your head should be up, shoulders tucked around your neck. Here, the lower back tight. Okay, leg is out, I'm in a staggered stance position, I'm ready to wrestle. Now, for my opponent to snap me down, it makes it very difficult because my body's in the line here. Start at the head and go down to the hips. It's a straight line. The neck is tight and the lower back is tight. I'd like to bring in the lesser of the Sherr twins now, Jim, and demonstrate how this technique works. When you're in your stance, maintaining this position, I demonstrated the importance of having one leg in front of the other. This allows me to attack my opponent easier. If I'm going to shoot my single leg, notice how close I am right here. To step and attack the single. Or the high crotch, I can step right between. The other thing this does, it allows me to protect my leg. Now it's tough for Jim to attack here. Because again, I have the one arm down and the one arm up. The high hand, low hand. And this is protecting my leg. Jim attempts to shoot, I can block and keep him from scoring on that leg. The high hand, the importance of the high hand here is it enables me to control my opponent. If I want to tie up, I can take my ties here, and now I'm not out of position when I reach to tie. If I would reach with the low hand first and attempt to tie up, I open myself up to attack. So I never try to reach with the low hand, I always reach with the high hand to position myself for tie-ups. Keeping your lower back tight and your neck tight prevents you from being snapped down. If Jim tries to snap me down here, I move into him, make head contact, and keep my neck. Getting the head contact and moving into him forces him to try to pull me through his body to snap me down, which is impossible. If, when he attempts to snap, I move back and pull my head up, then I begin to get myself out of position. Rather, I want to keep myself tight and move into my opponent, making head contact so that I'm always in position. This also forces him to look bad in the eyes of the official. And last, when I move, I always want to maintain this position. You notice I'm moving forward or back or to the side. I'm always still in my good stance position. If I shoot an attack, I really have never left that position, even when I'm shooting my attack, because my head, my hips, my feet are still all in the proper alignment where they started when I was in my stance position. If you remember that throughout the techniques we show today, always to maintain that proper position, you're going to get scored on less, and it's going to be easier for you to score on your opponent. There are a few drills I would like to cover that will help you maintain proper stance position and help you be able to counter your opponent when he attacks. The first thing, when I counter my opponent and sprawl, I don't throw my hips back and lose complete control of where I'm at on the mat. I don't sprawl like this. Because I feel when you do that, you're losing control in positioning. What I like to do instead is work a sprawl drill where I'm using my arms and legs to counter my opponent. If I'm worried about a shot on this side, I'll step back, lower my hips so that I get hip pressure and weight on my opponent, and I'll extend an arm down so I block my opponent from scoring on me. Here. Or if it's the other side, it would be here. Or if it were a high crotch to this side instead of a single leg, it would be this arm and this leg here. This arm and this leg here. So there's 4 different things I can do. Single leg to this side, it's here. High crotch to this side, here. Single leg to this side, here. And high crotch to this side is here. And I'd like to use my brother Jim to show how I work this drill. Find an opponent that you can stop. You know you can stop. And Jim is such an opponent for me. All right. When I'm doing this drill, I'll have Jim start out by shooting a single leg. I'll block and move the leg back. Now I'll cover, get ready to attack with the front headlock or a body lock. Then I'll say, go ahead and shoot a high crotch on this side. I'll block and move back. Now I'm covered, okay? High crotch on the other side. It's the same thing here and back. Single leg on the other side.
A match against a Soviet wrestler in Phoenix, Arizona. He's going to attempt to shoot a single leg. I block with the arm, drop my hip down, extend my leg back away from him, stopping his forward motion to my leg. Now I square up to the middle, freeze my opponent, and keep him from scoring on his shot.
The other thing I'll do is I'll work on letting him try to snap me down, and I'll work on maintaining my position. He can push me or pull me. And I always maintain that position, get head contact, and control his arms. Finally, another drill, the last thing that I do to maintain this stance position, is we'll just wrestle at maybe 75% or 80% capacity, and we'll try to move each other out of position. And we won't really try to attack until we actually move someone out of position. So I'll be wrestling and drilling, and we're going about 75%, and the only time we'll attack is if we're able to get our opponent out of position. And this forces you to stay in position longer. When you're in practice, I want you to concentrate on maintaining your position, and that takes an intensity throughout the practice. I mean, the first day you might only be able to stay in your good stance for 20 or 30 seconds. The second day maybe it'll be a minute. Eventually you should be able to maintain that stance position for a 30 or 40 minute wrestling practice, even when you're tired. The longer you can do it in practice, the longer you're going to be able to do it in a match. My penetration step. I don't take a drop step, rather I just bend at the knees and lower my elevation before I start the penetration. I feel that if you take a drop step, you're tipping your opponent off to your attack too quickly. So if you're just able to drop and then shoot, you can score from any position on the mat. Lower the elevation by bending the knees, and when you do this, maintain that position. Keep your head position and hip position in alignment. Don't bend over here, but drop by bending the knees here. Okay? Once you've dropped, now your spring is coiled. You're ready to attack. You have power. Push off the side of your foot. I want the whole area here of the shoe on the mat so that you're pushing and you're able to drive off more area than just off your toe. Lower the elevation. Get that foot on the mat. Step the lead leg out as far as you can and drive. Notice how the chest stays over the knee. I'm driving, the knee hits the mat, and I step the back leg up, and I'm in position. I'll work on this penetration step in a way that you probably don't work on your penetration step now. Traditionally, you may have been taught to drill a penetration step here, where you step and slide across the mat and continually pick your feet up. When you work on this penetration step, I want you to concentrate on the power and snap of this drive, and I want you to set yourself up to do it each time. So you're going to lower your elevation, step to the knee, drive, pop up, and you're in your penetration step. Now you get back in your stance, and you do it again. I want you to pay particular attention to how I pick this back leg up. I'm lowering my stance, I step out, I drive to the knee, and I'm picking this back leg up and snapping it forward. I don't drag that toe on the mat. That's like an anchor back there if you drag it. I want you to pick it up and snap it forward. So here's what that shot will look like from start to finish. Lower the elevation, step, drive, pop up. You want to quickly snap into it. Let's concentrate on the body and hand positioning on this high crotch takedown. The penetration step I've just shown you is for an open high crotch where you're not tied up with your opponent. Your hand position, I want you to shoot your hands into the leg, straight to the leg. So you're going to lower your elevation, and as you step and drive, your hands are going to pop to the leg here. Step up with the back leg and you're in position. This hand should be shooting into the crotch, and as you lower your elevation, you might want to turn your body slightly to get this arm penetrated farther into the leg here. Lower your elevation, step. If you notice, this arm here traps this leg right at the knee joint here. The other arm comes over and holds here. You're just kind of crossing your arms in this manner. The back leg is stepped up, and now I want you to notice the body position here. Notice how my head is up, I'm looking towards the ceiling. My shoulder is directly underneath my opponent. I'm at an angle so I can drive here. My hips are in. There's 3 points I want you to remember right now. Head up, back straight, hips in. If your opponent puts weight on you, here, go ahead and just put all your weight on me. Your body structure is holding your opponent's weight. It's taking very little effort for me right now to hold my opponent up and maintain this proper position. This toe is on the mat, and that toe is not flat here. The toe is up and on the mat. If your opponent pushes into you, I want to be able to push back into him with my toe here. If the toe is flat and he pushes into me, I don't have anything to push back and maintain my position. This toe also has to be able to slide and spin and you have to be able to spin with your knee so that you can maintain position when your opponent tries to move. The first thing that he's going to try to do is to step away from you to take away your angle. And when he does that, you just have to pivot on your knee and slide this toe so that you maintain proper position. He's going to spin. There. Notice how I'm sliding the toe this way and rotating on my knee to maintain that position. We've gone one complete revolution around the mat, and I still have my position. My head is still up, my back is still straight, and my hips are still in, and that leg is still tight to my chest. I'm here. I'm going to pull this up, use my head to push his weight off me, step here, use this leg for power. Now, as I step across, I want you to notice that I'm stepping straight sideways in a line. I'm not doing it at an angle. I'm not going into my opponent especially. He can move backwards, back and forth pretty easy. I've never seen anyone walk down the street sideways, and I want to take him sideways because he can't move that leg to the side. So I'm driving here, and I step. Notice how I've stepped to the outside. I'm not tripping, I'm just stepping. Now I catch the knee here and turn it in with my elbow. And I continue to drive. And in that manner, I drive across and switch to the double leg takedown and finish on my opponent immediately after penetrating. If you attempt to switch to a double leg without driving across, you'll be countered very easily. If I'm here and I try to switch to a double, all he has to do is drop his arm and catch me. Because he's in good balanced position, he can do that. If I lift this leg and push with my head and step, now catch me and stop me from shooting. He doesn't have the balanced position to stop my double leg.
I'd like to show you a few setups to the high crotch takedown. Let's begin with the fake shot, which freezes your opponent and allows you to penetrate. I begin by moving my opponent, step back, I fake the shot. It freezes my opponent for a slight instant. Now I reshoot, lower my elevation, penetrate to the leg, and end in good position. Next setup I'd like to show you is the elbow post. Oftentimes your opponent will reach his arm towards your body to lay his hand on your shoulder. When he does that, I want you to cup your hand with your thumb to the inside and catch above his elbow. When you catch above his elbow, you're going to post it behind your body, lower your elevation, and rotate your body. Penetrate completely in before you release your grip on the shoulder. Step up with the back leg and finish in correct position. The underhook tie-up is an excellent setup for the high crotch takedown because you have great control of his arm. When you get the underhook, move away from your opponent so that he must step the high crotch leg towards you. When he steps the leg towards you, I pull down the arm and the head to make my opponent react and snap up. Once I get him to react, I throw his body and his arm up, and I throw his arm behind my body. As I do that, I rotate into him, extending my hand up his crotch. When you do that, throw his arm over his body, over your body completely, extend your body in, drive, step up with the back leg, and finish in correct position. A setup that's very similar to the underhook setup for the high crotch takedown is the head and collar tie, where your arm is controlling his arm with an inside tie up over his tricep. You're going to pull down with the collar and head tie, wait for him to react. When he reacts, you pop underneath. At the same time, you throw his arm over your head. When you do that, notice how I lift my elbow up, which lifts his arm and clears space for me to bring my back arm up around to his leg. As you bring the arm to his leg, step up with the back leg, finish in good position. A great opportunity to shoot the high crotch takedown stems from your opponent getting a front headlock on you and not keeping tight control of your head. Notice how my outside arm is controlling his elbow and pulling it to the outside. This gives me space to clear my head to the outside when I go to shoot the high crotch takedown. When I shoot the high crotch takedown, I'm going to pop my knees and my hips underneath my opponent. I want to completely pop underneath my opponent's center of gravity. When I do this, it's going to throw my opponent's weight over my back there. Now, many people are worried about getting countered to their back from this position with the whip over. But notice how off balance my opponent is. He's unable to counter me with the whip over. And by the time he recovers his balance, I will be shifted back into good position and ready to finish the takedown.
It is not always possible to drive across and finish with a double leg takedown. But that's what I want you to attempt to do first, every time. That's what I attempt to do. I make this man react to me then. If he stops me, then I can go into another finish, but I always attempt to drive across first. If I attempt to drive across and he immediately feels that and puts weight on me and pressure on me and blocks my inside arm from switching across to the double leg, then I can switch to another finish. If his weight is on me in such a manner that his body weight is over my shoulder, all I'm going to do is pop my hips underneath his body here, slide the knee under, and get the hips under. And as I do that, I'm going to arch, drive my arm straight up his crotch. That pops his weight up in the air. Now I switch to the double and down.
Jim is going to shoot the high crotch against Maharbek Kadartsev, the Soviet Union world and Olympic champion. Kadartsev has the front headlock position. Jim pulls the elbow back, pops his hand underneath, throws the hips under, and gets into the high crotch. Kadartsev moves away, and Jim does an excellent job of continuing to drive in and getting his hips back into position and getting up into good position. He keeps working until he gets his head up to where he can lift, switch to the double, and drive across.
When you're doing these different finishes, I want you to make sure that you maintain contact with your chest on his leg and keep his knee tight to your chest. Don't let this leg slide away from you here. If that leg gets away, you're going to be beat from this position.
An excellent finish to the high crotch takedown is hitting a crackdown where you put the weight over your opponent's ankle, crack him down to the mat, go low on his leg. I'm going to catch the wrist, my inside arm. I rock him up towards his back, freeze him in this position for the fall.
As you lower your elevation to crack him down, to crack his hip down to the mat, I want you to make sure that you don't drop your weight before you have the weight of his hip out over his foot. If I start to lower my elevation here too low and I don't have his weight over that foot, he can extend it back and get it away from me. I want to make sure that he's going down already before I start to drop my weight. Now his hip is over that foot, I can drop down. I'm going to lower my weight and back my body away so that I'm right at his ankle as I drive down. Now I want you to notice the position here. I'm low on the knee, I'm wrapped around right here at the ankle. I have my shoulder and the knee here, and I'm lifting this leg here so that his hip is on the mat. So it's here. And as I do that, he'll be attempting to maintain position here. I want to run my hip out to the outside in this manner. I want to keep scooting my hip out to the outside. I don't want to give him an angle to where he can scoot around behind me. So I want to run this hip out in this direction here. Okay? I want to make sure that I have weight on this arm so that he can't extend his leg back away from me. If I let this arm go out, he can pop his hips away. There. And I'm beat. So I pop down here. Now, he's going to be attempting to maintain position here by wrapping around my waist. So I keep the knees together, and I keep this elbow down to my side. I don't want him to be able to reach into my crotch here. If he can get in my crotch there, he's going to be able to throw me in a crotch lift. So as I drop down, I make sure my knees stay together. The other thing I don't want him to be able to do is wrap around my body here. If he wraps around my body there, he has a chance to counter me. So as I drop down, I bring my elbow to my side. That keeps him from wrapping around my body. The first thing I want to do from here is I'm going to post my hand on the mat, I'm going to drive into him, I'm going to lift the leg. And hopefully this is going to pop him to his back here. As I do that, I pop my knees back up and I come up here and look to finish in this position. Sometimes he'll be able to kick through and I'll just have my takedown.
If you don't want to go all the way into the crackdown position, you don't feel comfortable there, it's great to fake the crackdown and make your opponent step back. Once he steps back, you can switch to the double and drive across and finish your takedown. Here's another shot from the 1989 World Cup. I fake a crackdown, get my opponent to react slightly. When he steps back, I switch across to the double and drive to finish the high crotch, taking him to his back for 3 points. Oftentimes when you get into the high crotch takedown, your opponent will reach into your crotch and attempt to throw you in a crotch lift maneuver. When he does this, he puts his body weight over your body. This allows you to get underneath with your knees and lift him, come out the back door. This same maneuver can be finished in a slightly different manner. When your opponent reaches for the crotch lift, slide your knees underneath, lift, get your opponent off his base. Now instead of finishing between his legs, I'm going to spin to the outside, wrap my arm deep, finish in that manner.
Hello, my name is Jim Sherr. I'm wearing the red singlet today. Bill spoke a little bit earlier about his philosophy of wrestling and some of his mentors that he learned from in wrestling. There are really 3 ways to learn new moves, new techniques in wrestling and to improve yourself. 1 is by your coaches and instructional videos such as this one. 2, it's from watching other people wrestle and analyzing their matches and what they did. The 3rd way is learning from your own experience. Every match you have, you should learn something as you go along. And a lot of times you learn quite a bit more through a defeat than you do through a victory. Every time you get scored upon, every time you get beat, you should learn something through that experience. Turn that into a positive experience. Look back on how he scored upon you, what mistakes you made during that match, and try and eliminate those as you go on in practice. So every time you get scored upon or get defeated, you should remember what happened, write down and look back upon why you were scored upon or beaten, and try and eliminate those as you go on and you practice. Bill also spoke about positioning, the importance of staying in good position. You want to stay in good position yourself always, but also with my wrestling, I try and keep my opponent out of good position. I always want him reacting to me. I don't want to constantly react to my opponent during the matches. I want to keep him reacting to me, keep him moving, keep him off balance the whole time while I'm staying in good position. I'd like to demonstrate a single leg now. It's a head inside single leg, and I use the same penetration step that Bill used earlier on his high crotch. The same mechanics to your penetration step. You're always in the same position with your back and your hips. And I use the same penetration step whether I'm shooting a double leg, a single leg, or a high crotch. I want to be able to execute my techniques to both sides, but by specializing in one penetration step for my single leg, my double leg, or the high crotch, I don't have to change positions to do it, and I can specialize in one penetration step. You can be better at one instead of being good at 2 different penetration steps. So we'll move on to the mechanics of the single leg. First thing that you want to do is lower your elevation as in all penetration steps. On my penetration leg, I want to step it to the leg I'm shooting at. I want my toe to go past his heel. So I want my penetration step to go deep and through the man. I'm going to drive my knee. I'm going to aim it somewhere back behind the man. So I want my force to go through the man on the single leg. Now you lower elevation, penetration step goes in. I'm going to drop my knee through. Now it's a head inside, so I want my cheek to hit his chest, lower part of his chest right here, and my chest to hit his leg and drive through. Now as I hit, I knock him off balance and lock. Use a butterfly lock with your thumbs in. Your backhand is always on top. This is because if my backhand's on top and he reaches down to pull my grip off, he'll pull his leg up instead of pulling my grip loose. Whereas if the inside hand is on top, he pulls it off, he breaks my grip. So you want your outside hand on top. Now your back leg, you want to follow it up to here, but you don't want to come up too tight because he can hook it and roll you through. So you're here. You always want your head in his chest, your back straight, and your hips in here. Now you drive up to your finish. You drive off this leg, step your back leg up high. You're in this position. There's no space between my chest and his upper thigh. Hands are pulling his leg in tight, no space. My cheek is on the side of his chest, pushing him off balance. If I'm in this position, head down, space here, he can lean on me, put his weight on me instead of on his far leg. If I want this leg in tight, my cheek against his chest and all his weight on his far leg, I want to post this leg to the mat so it's immobilized. And I can start my first finish from this position. The primary finish to the single leg is the back toe block. I'm going to block his heel with my toe. So I'm going to, keeping his weight all on his post leg by pushing into him with my head and leaning into him with my chest, squeezing my knees together to hold this leg in. Now my back leg steps up a little bit, step around to block his heel. My toe is up in the air. Now I have his heel blocked, push him over it with my head, hook the far knee, and cover. I want to make sure as I come down to keep this knee out and not go to my hip to fall off balance, or else he can roll into me. Also, when you step, it's important to remember it's not a trip or hooking with your heel, because you'll be off balance to the back if you do that. But when you step, you want to block it, his heel with your toe, and step pigeon-toed with your knees, with your foot in. Demonstrate that through once again. You're in good position, chest in, knees bent, knee cocked to the middle. Step in so it's not such a reach. Step around, block it with your toe up in the air, push him over it, hook the far knee, and post.
Finish a single leg on world and Olympic champion Maharbek Kadartsev from the Soviet Union. Drop in the single leg on a flurry position. Keep driving, keep your head up, good position. Always drive. Step behind, get your back heel trip, drive into him, and finish. One of my favorite setups to the single leg is to incorporate a fake single and a snap down. You fake your single, he pulls his leg back, you try and hit your snap down. If you can, snap him down, but if he reacts by posting your leg that you're shooting the single toward, let his head pop up, lower your elevation, penetrate for your single. Another setup for the single leg is to fake your high crotch and shift off to the single leg. So you fake the high crotch, he reacts by pulling that leg back, then he thinks you're shooting a high crotch, drive to your single leg, and finish. A good setup for the single leg is to control an outside tie, push into your opponent. When he pushes back into you, you pull that arm down and step away from the leg you're shooting towards. Now, that leg will come forward toward you, lower your elevation, drive to your single, and finish. The same setup can be done with double outside ties. Hook both hands outside, push into your opponent. When he pushes his weight back into you, snap down on both arms, posting his leg that you're shooting towards. Lower your elevation, drive to that thigh, head up, come up to your finished position. Another excellent way to get into your single leg position is to do it from an underhook. You take your elbow and you lift the arm to give you space to drop down to your single. At the same time you're lifting, your inside arm is hooking his knee, step behind, and drop into your single leg position. Now you're in your basic finish position. Another setup for the single leg is to take a 2-on-1, and your opponent leaves his leg close to you. You drop your shoulder below his shoulder, drive into him and pick the single leg up. You don't release with your inside hand on the arm until you've driven into your opponent and he comes off his leg. Now you release, hook your lock, and you're in your single leg finish position.
All the remaining finishes to my single leg will depend on his reaction to my primary finish. So I'm going to start with the back heel block every time, and depending on what he does will dictate my next finish. Another finish to the single leg, if you attempt a back heel trip and he hops over your trip, this extends his base, causing him to be off balance. Now you can do your retreat finish. The first step is a large step to the middle, pivot your back leg around, pulling his leg away from him. Now you drop your shoulder down on his thigh, pull up on his calf, lower your elevation by bending your knees. This drops him to the mat. Don't go down with your opponent, but let him fall, then cover. The key to executing this is you should think of the motion as if you were hiking a football. So after your initial step, you slid your hands down into a V. You want to bring your chest straight between your knees and keep your head in line with your body. You don't want to pull your head outside of your knee. You want to stay in line with your body. Then the pressure is dropping your knees down and your chest between your knees, and throw your hands through your leg as if you're hiking a football instead of trying to whip your hands outside your knee. I'll demonstrate it again. Step. Now you pull, you're trying to take his leg away from him. You drop your chest down between your knees and bend your knees. Now we'll cover some finishes to the single leg when you're out of position down on your knees. He pushes your head down and steps over. You want to drive your knee in between his legs, post on your hand, and lift with your back, pushing up. Make sure your back is completely straight and you're off your haunches. Now pull one knee to your shoulder, push the other knee off, staying completely straight, let him fall to the mat, then cover. What you don't want to do on this finish is follow him down to the mat as you push his knee off your head. If you follow him down to the mat, you'll end up getting caught on your side in bad position.
When I'm wrestling, I always like to find out if my opponent is in a good position and in a good stance by attempting to snap him down first before I attempt to shoot on him. If you can snap someone down and score the easy points, you often put yourself in less danger than trying to penetrate underneath somebody. So I always attempt to snap him down first. And if I can't snap him down, well then I figure that he's up too high and I must be able to penetrate underneath him. Just the first basic snap down we'll do from a collar and a head tie-up. I'm going to hold the shoulder here, the tricep here. I have the inside position. I have my arm over his tricep. His arm will wrap over my elbow here. Now I have the head. I have my collar, my forearm on his collar here, and the hand wrapped around his neck. Okay? I'm pushing the elbow in to the inside so that he can't penetrate and shoot on me. If I reach up and over his head, he'll be able to shoot, penetrate. So I want to tie up here to the inside so I'm blocking his body. Here. Now what I'm going to do is put a lot of pressure and a lot of weight on him. I'm going to push into him. Here. Driving. Putting pressure on him. When I feel him push back into me, I'm going to go ahead and snap him down to the mat. And I do that not by jumping my weight back off him like you see a lot of people try to jump back and snap, but I do that by putting pressure and weight on my opponent. I do that in the direction where he does not have balanced position with his feet. So as I push into him, I feel him lean and push back into me, and I watch his feet position. If his stance is staggered like this, I look for the point of the triangle that his feet make, and then I snap in that direction. So here would be the point of the triangle. I'm going to snap him here. There'll be many times when you wrestle somebody, especially against the tougher opponents, where when you snap them, they don't go down completely to the mat. But you will be able to get their head underneath your body position. And if you can get your head underneath your body, you're going to be able to continue the motion and take them to the mat. If I snap him and I can't pull him all the way to the mat, he stops here, I'm going to get my weight on top of his head here. Now I don't want to let his head slip out to the side, because if his head slips out to the side, he's going to be able to shoot and penetrate on me. So I pull it in with this elbow. If you look to the other side, I'm in nearly a front headlock position, but the elbow is into my side, and I keep his head underneath my stomach and chest. And at the same time I do this, I'm arching my stomach into him. Okay? Here. Now, he's going to be in a good position. It's going to be very difficult for me to circle and pull him to the mat, because he has his weight underneath him. So what I like to do first is push into him, make sure that I can get my grip square, Make sure I have his chin here. Make sure this other hand is catching here. Okay? If his arm is back, I push into him until I can maintain this position. Now I'm going to circle. I'm going to swing my weight away from him in a circular motion and snap at once down to my knees and pull him to the mat. Once I snap him to the mat, I'll cover that position.
Here's an example of a snap down against Sabiev, a wrestler from the Soviet Union. I'm going to move him in a circular motion to get him off balance. I'm going to step back and take all my weight, drop it down to my knees and put it onto him. Now I jerk my arms down and snap, actually get his head to bounce off the mat a little bit here. Switch to the butt drag, come around behind for the takedown.
I think this should be your primary finish that you attempt to do from this position. If that doesn't work, then you can go into your front headlock or your variety of different body lock positions. But I'd like to see you attempt to try this butt drag first. If I'm in this position and my opponent is up on his arms, I'm going to move back and snap him down again so that I get his elbow to the mat. Once I have that elbow to the mat, I'm going to reach here, right up the crotch, and pull hard. I want to pull up, not to the side, so that my opponent's weight is on his head. I want to pull up as hard as I can to get my weight on my opponent's head, and I pull up as hard as I can here. Now, when I come out to the side, my opponent doesn't have the ability to lift his arm and head up to trap me and stop me from going around behind him here. I'm going to reach and catch in his underarm with this arm. As I do that, my elbow is pressing against the back of his neck and his head, keeping his head down, and I reach and catch the underarm here. Now I pretend like I'm hanging out from a flagpole. I keep my legs out away from me, on my tiptoes, and I move around behind my opponent. I don't try to jump and move around behind because that lets the weight off my opponent and he can reach his arm up and catch me. I move very slowly on my tiptoes, like I'm on a flagpole. And once I get to the side, I drive and try to break my opponent off his base position.
Here's an example of taking advantage of a bad shot by your opponent. Stop his motion, come to the front headlock, circle him down to his elbows, switch to the butt drag, move around behind for the takedown. You can also hit this snap down from an underhook position. You control the underhook on one side and your other hand controls the head. Move him in a circular motion, bring him to the mat, and then reach over his head, controlling him in the front headlock position.
When I'm wrestling, I like to do a lot of techniques from the underhook position, because when I'm in an underhook position, if I'm executing a move properly, I feel like I'm in a good attacking position, but it's also a good defensive position because he cannot attack me from here unless he gets head position on the inside. So on the underhook, I want to have head position. When I do the underhook, I want to have my elbow lifted high, my hand on top of the shoulder, controlling his arm and this side of his body, and have head position. This next technique is an inside trip from an over-under position. I want to pull the man in a circle, getting him to step the leg I want to sweep. Now I step in, sweep around. Notice how my head comes across with my foot. Now you chop on his thigh. At the same time you drive your hips in. Lower your hips and drive through the man. You finish, you want to make sure you're square and post both hands on the mat. The position that this move works best from is when he's on his heels and he's fairly straight up and down, pulling back a little bit. So to set this move up, I pull him in a half circle with my underhook, my opposite hand hooked on his tricep. And you always sweep with the leg opposite of your underhook. So you pull in a half circle. I want his feet wide and his weight on his heels, his hips up. So if I pull him toward me in a half circle, that creates that position. Penetration step goes in, back step comes up, and I sweep out behind his calf, head shifts across, chop on the thigh, lower elevation, drive straight through the man. Post on either side, lift your heel up. Now, it's very important when you're doing this move that your nose always follows your toes across when you're doing the move. You never want to have your foot out in front of your head, because as soon as your foot's in front of your head, you're off balance backwards. So you always want to maintain this position with your head, your toe, and your hips here. And as your foot goes across, just pretend there's a steel rod between your big toe and your nose. Your head has to follow your foot through. So as you do the move, your head follows your foot exactly across. Penetrate in, step through, your head comes across. Now you want to chop on his thigh that you're sweeping so he can't step off. If he just went like this and drove in, he can step off and around. But by chopping here, it holds his leg in. So you chop, drive your hips straight in, close on either side. When you execute this foot sweep, inside sweep, one of the points that will help you is not to be ear to ear here in your underhook tie-up, because you want to have enough room to slide your head across. You're taking your head from a point up here, and you want it to end up point down here on his hip. So you slide it across and down, you want to have space, but you also want to have space as you go into the man to have force to knock him over. Pull here, drive through. Now, if he is able to step off of your block leg, what you want to do, he steps off, you want to hook, just keep it hooked, and change your motion and just keep driving, hook the far leg, and end up in a double leg position. Here I'm able to do an inside trip against Melvin Douglas, the move that wins the 1988 Olympic trials for me. The penetration steps in, sweep around behind, head comes across, chop on the thigh. Now he steps off the inside trip, so you have to drive and finish with a double leg. Catch the far knee and drive across. Another position from which you can execute an inside trip is double underhooks. Hook your double underhooks, circle the man toward you, pull him down, step your sweep in, drive through, chop on the thigh, drive forward, post your hands squarely. I also like to do the inside trip from a front headlock position. Circle the leg toward you again, drive his chin to his knee to post that foot, sweep behind, drive him down. When you feel his balance break, let his head pop out, then cover squarely again. Another move I like to do from the over-underhook position is a foot sweep. From the over-underhook position, push into your opponent until you feel him push back into you. When his weight is leaning into you, pop your hips in, block the far leg, twist, pulling his body across, keeping your hips popped in, follow him down to the mat, cover for the fall. There are two little tricks I do that help me with this move. One is you hook the lat back here so you can pull, twist him through. On the other side, when I have the overhook here, I'm catching his forearm with my bicep, and I'm pushing his elbow with my forearm, or holding it here with my hand so I can push this side through. Pull this side and push so you can twist his upper body and pull it across your block with your foot sweep. Also, I want to step the opposite leg that I'm sweeping with in between his legs so my feet are in tight so I can get my hips underneath his. I push in, jerk, step in, catch the block, pull him through, follow him down to the mat. You can also do the foot sweep from the double underhook position. Push into your opponent till he pushes back into you, and pull down to post his foot, step your hips in, block the leg, sweep him to his back.
Another technique from the over and under body lock position, which can get you out of a lot of trouble and also score points for you, is the underarm spin. I like to make sure that there's space between my opponent's hips and my hips so that I can clear my hips through to do the underarm spin. I already start to cheat and get myself in position by turning my hip towards my opponent, turning that foot sideways so that I'm in position to rock through here. When I go, I make sure that I pinch down tight with the arm over the elbow so he can't pull his arm away from me. I clasp on the tricep very tightly. It's important, the most important part of this move is keeping control of this arm. If you lose the arm, you lose the technique. From here, I'm going to rock my arm straight up underneath and get my shoulder underneath my opponent's underarm. As I do that, I'm taking a back step here. Clear the arm and get your hips through before you start to drive yourself to the mat. Once you get to this position, you're going to wrap his arm around your body like you'd wrap a cable around a spool, and drive your knee towards his far foot and roll him over your body. When you hit, I'd like you to plant your head on the mat, bring your arm through, and cover for the fall.
Executing the underarm spin takedown can be made easier if you get your opponent to step into you. Notice how I cheat forward with my front foot, set myself up for the back step. Once I start to hit the back step, I clear my arm underneath, clearing his shoulder, pop my hips all the way through, bring the outside knee towards his far foot, drive, throw him over my body. Once I hit, I spin back, post my head on the mat, clear my arm over his body, cover for the fall. Oftentimes it's necessary to finish this underarm spin with a different technique, because as you do it, your opponent will drop to his knees and will not give you the chance to throw him over your shoulder. When this happens, you should switch hands on his arm to the arm drag position. Once you're in the arm drag position, you can reach over his back, move behind your opponent for the takedown. Here I'm wrestling Kirk Trost in the national finals. I'm going to execute an underarm spin takedown from the over and under body lock position. Step in, hit the back step, spin through. As I attempt to roll him through for 3, Kirk drops to his knees. At this point, I switch my lock into the arm drag position and then move around behind for the takedown.
Next technique I'd like to cover from the over and under body lock position is the body lock throw itself. When I hit this throw, I'm always in the same position. And this position that I start this throw from is very important. I want to again make sure that my opponent's shoulder is in the middle of my chest, the point of his shoulder. I want to be out at an angle to my opponent, and I want to be able to have some space here so I can pop my hips and control my opponent with my hips here. I want my hands locked low, and I want them locked to the side here, so I can squeeze my opponent and control his body. When you see someone do a body lock throw, a classical Greco-Roman body lock throw, they'll step in, they'll step around the leg, they'll lower their elevation, and they'll pop and they'll throw in a circular motion. It's very difficult to do that in freestyle or high school and college wrestling, because your opponent can use his legs, grab your legs, or he can react, and he's usually more reactionary to any upper body type throws than he would be in Greco-Roman wrestling, because they have their elevation lower, they're not standing straight up. So that classical Greco-Roman throw is going to be very difficult to execute. So I kind of adapted a body lock throw that I thought would be more successful in freestyle and college wrestling. When I hit this throw, all I do is pop my both knees in and pop my hips in. As I do that, I rotate and throw in a circular motion. I'm not trying to throw him over my body and get a great arch or anything. I'm just trying to whip him over to his back. This is quicker than the other throw. It's easier to do, doesn't take as good of an arch, and it's a higher percentage throw than trying to step in for college and freestyle wrestling. So when I do this, I pull, I pop, I want to get his arm on this side trapped tight to his side with my body. I pop my hips in. I usually try to pop over this knee, this outside knee with my knee here. Pop the hips in, and you're going to pop back and throw in a circular motion. I'll go through the entire throw. You end up perpendicular out to the side of your opponent. You won't get this spectacular high arch, but it's a much higher percentage throw for college, I believe, for college and freestyle wrestling.
Here's a technique from the 1989 World Cup. My brother Jim is going to execute the step around body lock against Kim Tae-woo, the Korean Olympic bronze medalist. Jim steps around, blocks the leg. He's going to turn his knee in, drive through his opponent, pop the hips in, drive him to his back for 3 points.
Even if you get trapped and he's able to counter you somewhat on the throw, you can still end up coming out to the side for your 1-point takedown. So as I start to throw, Jim feels that I'm going to throw, pops his weight off to the side or pop his hips down. Here I can still come through and score. So So I start to throw, he pops out, I throw his shoulder and come out behind for the 1 point.
Here's an example of the body lock throw against 1980 Olympic champion Sanazar Oganishin from the Soviet Union. Notice my position. I'm at an angle to my opponent. I'm locked to the far side. My hands are locked low around his waist. Instead of stepping in the classical Greco-Roman style, I'm just going to pop my hips in and twist. As I do this, I'm going to try to arch him to his back. If I'm unsuccessful at getting him to his back, I can pop my hips out to the outside and swing up for a 1 point takedown.